So I wanted to talk a little bit about ecosystem function and the brittleness scale and why the tool of holistic planned grazing is such a vital tool in the right situations. So Earth is one big ecosystem, and within that ecosystem there are 4 ecosystem processes at work all the time. There's water cycle, mineral cycle, community dynamics, which is biodiversity, so how everything within that ecosystem interacts with everything else, and energy flow, so how the sun's energy passes through all of that, and everything relies on that either directly or indirectly to survive. And then those 4 ecosystem processes are at work in Earth's ecosystem. But those ecosystems exist on a brittleness scale from non-brittle environments to very brittle. So non-brittle is places that are consistently humid, to very brittle, which is where I am now in Victoria Falls in Zimbabwe. Right now we're going through a few months of our rainy season, but then we'll go into 9 long months of very dry. And the brittleness don't get mixed up between, it's nothing to do with the amount of rainfall, or it's how rain is distributed throughout the year. So, for example, London and Johannesburg will have the same amount of rainfall throughout the year, but it's distributed completely differently. London will have rain pretty much all throughout the year, and Joburg will have, like here, they'll have a few months of rain and then 9 months of no rain. So it's how rainfall is distributed, or moisture is distributed throughout the year. So in the non-brittle environments, compared to the very brittle environments, what happens is at either end of that scale, those 2 environments respond entirely differently to the same influences. So when we rest land in a non-brittle environment, think of a rainforest or whatever, like a tropical environment, it will recover. But when we rest land in an environment like this, it dies. And that's because of how they developed. So non-brittle environment, so what happens in any ecosystem is microorganisms and little things in the soil, earthworms and all sorts of bugs and beetles, whatever, but mostly microorganisms and the things found under the soil surface break down the plant material. And in non-brittle environments, those organisms and creatures are active all year round because they need moisture to do it. So you come to us in a very brittle environment and there's no moisture for 9 months of the year. And the reason being is that the world's grasslands, which make up about 2/3 of the planet, is in very brittle environments or brittle environments, and our grasslands. And those grasslands developed in an incredible symbiotic relationship between herding animals, the plants, and predators and microorganisms and all of this. So I'll explain it a little bit. So in these sort of areas, we should have huge herds of impala, buffalo, wildebeest, zebra, giraffe, elephants, kudu, eland, you name it. We should have these herding animals, and then we should have a whole lot of predators, because they are the things that keep the animals moving correctly. So think of a big herd of buffalo. They're always being predated upon because nature has designed it so that predators make sure that the strength of the herd is kept up, because they will predate the weaker, the genetically weaker, or the younger, or the older. They keep the balance of the herd. So that herd stays bunched together and on the move. Bunched together to protect them from predators, and on the move because while they are bunched together, they're grazing, trampling, they're aerating the soil with their hooves, they're trampling old grass stems down, they're flattening them, and they're dunging and urinating on that grass, so they can't eat it after that, because remember, there should be thousands of them. And what that does is form this incredible protective fertilized mulch over the soil. So if we don't have that relationship going on, what happens is, now you see it rains and we get long grass, and what happens? That grass stays upright, and at the end of the rainy season, the sun can't get to the roots or the growth points of those plants. So the plants oxidize and die. And that's because what's supposed to happen is, like what will happen on this land now, is this grass will now be trampled, fertilized, aerated, flattened down over the soil. So when it's all flat, it forms like this thick mulch, and the soil underneath is so lovely and soft. And then when rain hits that, it infiltrates in and sinks down into our rivers. And we have water all year round on this land, even though it's in a very, very arid area, and we've had 17 years of drought. But what I wanted to talk about before I get to the tool of the holistic planned grazing is how fascinating I find it. If you look at, obviously I live in Africa and I'm very passionate about our wildlife, so I'll talk about them. And I take my kids and I say, right, let's look at all the different shapes and sizes of hooves. Like, why has nature designed this? And these are herding animals. So I say, imagine the tiny impala has these tiny, really sharp little hooves that splay out. They go like that, and they just break up the top of the soil surface. So thousands of these tiny little hooves breaking up just the top of the surface, and their delicate little mouths will only eat the delicate part of the grass plants and trigger growth points at that level. And then along comes something a little bit bigger, like there's a lot of bigger things. There's warthogs, so let's go to a kudu, because a kudu's got quite big hooves that also splay out, but they splay out in a different way, and they'll probably go much deeper and into the soil. And then you've got a buffalo which has round hooves, so they break up the soil in a different way. So you've got all this, and not only that, they're also trampling the grass in a different way, and they're also eating different parts of the grass plant. So they don't overgraze. They each eat what they're designed to eat of the plant. And then we go all the way up to a great big elephant herd that comes along, and they've got huge flat feet that are designed to just flatten down those really tough old grass stems that nothing else could possibly flatten down. And they eat the big, tougher, bigger grasses, and it's just so fascinating to think about. But then I also think of all the different shapes and sizes of dung. Why are they all different shapes and sizes? And you think impala have tiny little round hard dung, and in my mind that's because it's got to get through those grass plants and go to a different level of that mulch. So it's all the dung is designed to sort of filter through and stop at a different level to like flat dung that just stays on the top, on the surface. And now we come to the microorganisms, because the microorganisms get activated by that. So they get the moisture they need when passing through the ruminant's stomach, or the animal's stomach, and in the dung. So that's where the moisture comes from, that they need to be activated and stay active all year. So they're breaking down that plant material all year because of the herding animals. But with no herding animals, no trampling, no fertilizing, no aeration of the soil, the grasses die. So that's how rest. That's one of the tools we use in arid areas, is conservation or rest. But we now know that kills the grass plants in brittle environments. We can rest land in a humid environment and it will recover because those microorganisms are activated constantly. So think about that next time you come to Zimbabwe, and what's happened is we have upset the balance of all our herds and predators and everything to the point of they're completely behaving, they're either too few or they're too many behaving unnaturally. So we blame elephants in national parks, but we took the predator out, we took humans out. And we blame elephants for overgrazing and we blame livestock for overgrazing, but we're managing them. So, of course, if you take a predator away, everything's going to stop and stand still and overstay their welcome. They don't know because nature's designed it to all be instinctively. They just are. They don't think about how they're moving. They just do because that's what nature is, like our decision making. So, what happens when we domesticate cattle is we protect them from herders and we let them overgraze, we let them spread out where they should be bunched together and on the move. Naturally, they would have predators. We're the ones that domesticated them. Same with elephants, same with buffalo, same with anything where we've upset that predator-prey relationship. And now we just simply don't have enough wildlife to do the job. So what has been designed as a new biological tool in brittle environments is the holistic planned grazing process of livestock to lend a hoof. So this land has been regenerated thanks to a herd of wildlife which just lend a hoof of livestock which lend a hoof to the wildlife because we don't have enough. And so in the next couple of months the herd will come through here. We have about 700 cattle, goats and sheep, and they will come through here and they will trample down all of this over about a week. They move according to a planning process which considers all the social, economic and ecological variables going on this land all the time. So we look at when people will be here, we look at the finances, and we use a planning process which was actually taken from Sandhurst Military Training Academy. And we lay it all out on a chart, and we look at guinea fowl breeding periods, we look at when elephants are where, we look at all the wildlife breeding periods, and then we chart out their grazing, and we can adjust and flow at any point because we have it all written out on a chart, and then say buffalo come through and do the job and the cattle don't have to be there for so long, etc. So it's all planned according to all of those variables. Water, what if we have a fire? So it's a planning process where we can adjust and flow. So there's no system, there's no grazing system. Grazing system cannot possibly work because what we're managing is not systematic and very unpredictable. So it's a planning process where we're always able to adjust and flow with the variables going on the land. Sorry, I got pinned by an ant. So I find it absolutely fascinating, and I love teaching children all about just looking at hooves and mouths and different shaped dung. And I love going around this place and seeing the regenerated land and happy wildlife with water all year round, happy people, happy livestock. No artificial foods or anything for anything or anyone on this land. It's all regenerated and done by themselves. A lot of people are supplementing food for wildlife and livestock during the dry season. We don't have to do a thing, and it's all thanks to management, holistic resource management. Come and visit us.